Hello citizens of the multiverse, and welcome to Dark Knight Nation. We're coming back at you with some prime comic book analysis. This is my return to reading the regular Batman title through James Tynion. Now, we're going to be discussing Batman number 86 through 89, so we're going to kind of compress some of the plot summary. It's not going to be as vivid. We really want to focus on the analysis of those issues, so again, my description of the plot isn't going to be doing it a heck of a lot of justice, but you know that my review afterwards will be earnest on the entire thing. Now, most of you know that I stopped reading the Batman title during Tom King's run, so I was really excited to hop back into the main title. James Tynion is a writer at DC that I'm a fan of, and he has a slew of really talented artists working on the book, so I am super excited to get into this. With that out of the way, if you've never been here on Comics Insider, we like to break down and discuss all the things that these creators are doing that make us love comics right within the pages. Now, make sure you guys stick around to the end of the video, because today we're going to have an opportunity through my sponsor, AJ's Comics, to give away some free geeky goodness. So make sure you guys stick around. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below answering the question of the day, and of course subscribe to the channel for more content. With all that out of the way, let's get into the review. Batman number 86 by writer James Tynion and Tony S. Daniel begins with Batman traversing the rooftops of Gotham. His internal monologue keys us in to his current motivation to rebuild the city as a Gotham that doesn't need Batman. Batman's travels are with the intent of tracking down 4 of Gotham's deadliest mercenaries: Cheshire, Deathstroke, and 2 new villains, Mr. Teeth and Gunsmith. Batman is determined via the dark web that the 4 of them are meeting for something big, and Batman intends to stop. Now, one important thing to take note of here is, with Alfred having passed away, Batman's new guy behind the chair is Lucius Fox. So Lucius is essentially stepping up into a much bigger role into Batman's operation and his life. And I think that that is going to impact Batman's grieving process for Alfred moving forward and his ability to cope. With that being said, Batman uses the element of surprise to engage the mercenaries. Of course, with Deathstroke being amongst the deadliest, Batman's focus is on him. As Batman and Deathstroke begin to go blow for blow, Deathstroke believes that he's distracted Batman for long enough to let his comrades go free. However, we learn that using Batman's new Shadowcaster tech, he's created illusions of himself to corner them into a trap of his own design. Unfortunately, even though a conflict between Batman and Deathstroke would be something for the ages, we cut to the conflict practically being done with only about a page of hand-to-hand combat. Meanwhile, we pick up with Selina Kyle at a gala in one of the Wayne buildings, where they're trying to raise funds for Bruce Wayne's new initiative for Gotham. Her actual intent is to track down a thief in their midst, and she intercepts a man trying to rewrite Bruce's designs for the city. As this issue comes to a close, the man's skin begins to deteriorate and boil and sore up, and coming from a speaker inside the man's throat, Selina hears a familiar voice reminding her of her dastardly past. Through the speaker, the perpetrator reveals that Catwoman was a part of his plan to reshape Gotham many years ago. So Batman number 87 picks up, this time with art by Gilliam March. The Riddler contacts the Penguin through a private security channel to warn him of their mutual danger. What this reveals to us is that not only was Catwoman involved with this designer character who had some massive plot for Gotham, but so were the Penguin and the Riddler, which by this mass involvement by Batman's Rogues Gallery, we can only assume that whatever plan the designer has for the city is going to be massive. And apparently the 3 traditional villains backstabbed him somehow. Meanwhile, Batman is overseeing the police escort of the 4 mercenaries from the prior issue into Blackgate's state-of-the-art new Black Block, which is like essentially a new high-security plot point for the villains to escape out of to make it seem more impressive. Batman is talking to Catwoman on the comms, and they're trying to brainstorm what exactly is going on with the city and what plans this designer character may have for them. Meanwhile, Catwoman is internally wrestling with the possibility of revealing her involvement to Batman. And we learn that the blueprints that the man who is now lying dead next to Catwoman was trying to replace were in reference to a building that has already been built. After this conversation, we cut to Batman trying to interrogate Deathstroke in Blackgate Prison. During their conversation, he realizes that Deathstroke is being overly verbose and that it must be a distraction. So it registers with him that because of Cheshire's affinity for poison having lined pretty much every surface of her body with it to check her cell. And so when Batman takes her out of quarantine, he realizes that it's essentially just a clay dummy, and that he was actually being led to interrogate Deathstroke as a means to distract him. Batman ends up tracking Cheshire down and capturing her, only to find out that her mission was again a distraction to keep him away from the prison long enough for her cohorts to escape. And so the mercenaries end up being broken out, as expected, however, not by who they thought, as Penguin is in the control room looking to strike a deal with the mercenaries. Batman number 88 by James Tynion and Gilliam March picks up with Catwoman opening up a radio communication channel with the Riddler to try to figure out whether or not the designer has really returned to Gotham. As she reconfirms her suspicions in a conversation with the Riddler, she's also digging into somebody's grave somewhere in a Gotham cemetery, only to find the decomposed corpse of the Joker. Now, during the conversation, we begin to see a little bit of that anguish that comes with the idea of telling Batman what exactly she was a part of in her past, as he might reassociate her with her criminal origin. We learn during the conversation between Catwoman and the Riddler that the villains recruited by the designer many years ago revolted against him, pretty much forcing that plan that he had into failure. So it includes Catwoman, the Riddler, and the Penguin. And as we come to a close for this scene, Catwoman unearths the body of a decomposed Joker, leading us to believe that the Joker was also involved somehow many years ago. Cutting back to the streets of the city with Batman, as a result of the last issue, Batman has captured Cheshire only to learn that this entire chase was a further distraction to keep Batman away from Blackgate Prison to prevent the release of the 4 mercenaries. Using some of his newest tech, Batman throws the Echo device onto a nearby car to hack it and create a hollow interface to replace that image of the car with the image of a Batmobile, and it allows him to obviously kind of commandeer the car when there is no vehicle nearby. With that, Batman takes Cheshire's unconscious body, loads the car, and heads off to find Deathstroke, Penguin, and the rest of the mercenaries. Now, back in the graveyard, Catwoman again is kind of going through this internal struggle as to whether or not she should admit her involvement with the designer's plans for Gotham, when she's ambushed by the designer's men as he seeks revenge on those who broke off the deal with him. And as Catwoman is being buried alive, she's saved by none other than Harley Quinn. Meanwhile, in a warehouse somewhere in Gotham City, Penguin tries to bribe Deathstroke away from killing him, but Deathstroke claims that his price is far too high and something that Penguin could never pay. And as he launches an attack on the Penguin, Batman comes crashing through in his per diem Batmobile, I guess, and systematically takes down each one of the mercenaries until it's just him, Deathstroke, and the Penguin standing. However, Slade takes Penguin hostage, and as Merlin recovers Cheshire's body from the Batmobile. Obviously, being aware of Batman's overcaring nature, Slade slits Penguin's throat to take advantage of him and sets his sights on his real targets. The Penguin's now barely holding on to life. He struggles to expose the designer's plans for Gotham and his true target, Bruce Wayne. Alright, moving on to the final issue that we're going to be discussing today is Batman number 89, again by James Tynion, this time with art by Carlo Pagulayan. So of course this issue follows up almost immediately after its prior, with Penguin stumbling through a hospital, and as he does he collapses. An attendant rushes over to him and he offers the attendant $100,000 to call a particular number and ensure his survival before collapsing, which opens up a potential plot thread, and I feel like it might have a big role as to what's going to be going on moving forward regarding who exactly he called and what they might do. Meanwhile, Batman tracks down both the gunsmith and Mr. Teeth, and during his harsh and brutal beatdown, we get a very small taste of both of their backstories. So, one thing that's playing out here is Batman kind of acknowledging that this is almost like somebody trying to pull a Nightfall all over again. The designer is trying to send all of these mercenaries out, overwhelm Batman's faculties, but he realizes that he needs to stay collected and play the role of the detective here if he's going to make any headway on this case. We immediately cut back to Harley Quinn and Catwoman fighting their way through the designer's goons, and once they finally think that they're done, they're attacked by Merlin and Cheshire. Now, one important point to bring up here is Harley provides a little bit of expository information letting us know that A, the Joker has no part in this, and B, that is a fake Joker carcass laying there in the gravesite. Now, back to Batman, we learn that Batman has been tracking the Riddler and keeping tabs on all of his operations, so he infiltrates kind of the Riddler's keep and uncovers some security footage of the designer confronting Edward Nygma. This is huge, because Edward Nygma is kind of silently feeding Batman clues between using hand motions to signal autonomic codes and obviously laying in some riddles there. But what's interesting is he completely cuts the audio feed from the footage, so there's something that he doesn't want Batman figuring out. Of course, Batman solves the riddle, which is a classic, the riddle of the Sphinx, and uses this alphanumeric code to crack into his network, and he uses the network to ping Deathstroke's location, which he didn't have prior. And I can't help but think there might be more information that he's going to gather from it. But of course, James Tynion does as he has been throughout this entire arc and introduces another fun toy of Batman's and sends out his new Bat-spawn drone fleet after Deathstroke, which I think is a pretty logical progression of Batman technology, kind of having a fleet of drones that not only can provide a role in his vigilance upon the city, but also it looks like they might be weaponized to some degree, so that's pretty cool. As we close out this issue, Catwoman and Harley arrive to confront the Riddler only to find Batman, and this is where Catwoman decides to come clean and warn Batman of the severity of the designer's perfect crime. So I can imagine that next issue is going to follow up with the specifics and exactly why this is important and why Catwoman is so afraid. Alright, so overall, I think there are definitely a couple of things to be said about Tynion's Batman run so far. I think it's solid. I think it's good, with room for some definite improvement. I'm definitely enjoying reading the book, but I think, you know, just to get the criticism out of the way, I don't think the pacing is working particularly well. And by that I mean, I think everything that's happened in these 4 issues could have happened in 3. Tynion is a very charming writer, but I think that in this book he spends a lot of page space trying to be charming, getting some dialogue between people that I don't think we need as much of. I think that we could consolidate a lot. For example, the first page of issue 89 I didn't even talk about in the summary because it's just kind of people talking. Whereas I think that we could have done maybe 2 panels of that and then led into the Penguin entering the hospital. I think there are a couple different situations like that where we could be optimizing and economizing the page space. Therefore, I think that this would have worked a lot better if we could have squeezed these 4 issues into 3. And it's not 100% James Tynion's fault, because the industry is kind of leaning towards an even smaller 20-page count for every issue, which I think is going to be a detriment to the pacing of the industry, just seeing how it's a periodical type of publishing. There are pages like this where Batman is taking out the mercenaries. We've seen him fight them already. These are great cinematic pages for sure, but did I need 2 pages of it? No. I mean, we're not getting to see the actual fights we want to see anyways, right? I mean, we skipped over most of the Batman Deathstroke fight. We skipped over Harley and Catwoman fighting Cheshire and Merlin, really, you know, in place of watching them fight lowly thugs. So there are things like that that I wish we could see. I think the biggest thing for me is that even though I'm enjoying reading this book, the arc lacked a sense of urgency up until issue 3. It was issue 3 that we finally got to see that kind of mental and emotional tension that Catwoman is going through. And those are the real stakes, right? The real drama lies in what could happen from Selina's involvement, right? Because she's clearly scared for a reason. And revealing that to Bruce could create a lot of emotional conflict that could be really good. Also, it's issue 4, you know, what I'm reviewing up to, and we still don't know really remotely what the villain is after, the main villain. So I just wish that we economized the time that we have on the page, because comics are very difficult to pace. I'll give Tynion that. It's not an easy job. But I wish that we had gotten places sooner in place of wasting time on things that don't really push the story forward. Now, moving on to some really great things. Tynion's strength is in his characterization and the voice. I think he has all of these characters down pat, which is really, really important. We went through almost an entire run of Batman with Tom King, where personally I couldn't connect to the way he was characterizing Batman or vocalizing him. And Tynion has really returned back to a very thoughtful, a very precise and deliberate Bruce Wayne, not to mention emotional, right? The one thing that we forget about Batman is behind this wall that is containing him, there is a bomb of emotion ready to go off. And Tynion has done a very good job keeping the tension from the death of Alfred kind of lurking around Bruce's conscious. And that can play out in a lot of really interesting ways, at least, you know, when referring to the drama of the arc. I definitely think so far Tynion's run will read much better in trade, just because there's no weight, and again, that pacing is really what hurts this story the most for me. I think that we could really get more in there, and again, we sacrifice some of those more cinematic moments, like the fight between Deathstroke and Batman, for, you know, a full page of Batman talking to Bullock, or that random hospital scene that just doesn't do anything for the story, the arc, or the characters. And I'm all for charm and fun. Tynion is excellent at finding what makes these characters so appealing and conveying that in the story and charming us to them. But I just don't think we need to be using as much time to do that, so I don't think that there's necessarily a need to cram it in, because there's some really good writing in here. And I love the motivation that Batman is pursuing in this arc. What is his legacy as Bruce Wayne to Gotham? Can he finally build a city that is sustainable without Batman? The answer is probably no, but the journey and the potential of what could be coming out of that is really, really interesting. So I think that the arc has a lot more potential than it's showing, and it is really hindered for me by the way we're allotting that panel space. If we could fit these 4 issues into 3, I think that I would be much more comfortable giving this all of the thumbs up humanly possible. If I had to give so far this arc a rating, I'd probably give it about an 8.2. Definitely pick it up. It's a fine story with consistently good art. Consistently, even though it's, you know, we've had 3 artists in 4 issues, it's all been solid. Obviously, Tony S. Daniel is a legend on Batman. Gilliam March provides a very specific tone and visual quality to the book. And Carlo Pagano, let me tell you, after issue 4, I would argue that he deserves to be a series regular. And then obviously we'll be getting Jorge Jimenez at some point. I do want to touch on the art as well. They are excellent at composing their panels. They are taking some very dynamic camera angles that can really push the drama, that can really push the action, or whatever tone they're really trying to appeal to. Not to mention the panel layouts are very, very cinematic. They keep things moving, they feel kinetic. It doesn't feel like I'm looking at a 2-dimensional piece of art. I feel like I'm running through a film, which I think comics at its best is going to be doing that, which is awesome. The art is super, super solid. And also, I do want to give a lot of credit, particularly to Pagano, for his character acting. Character acting, I think, is something that reviewers don't talk a lot, because essentially the artist is the actress, right? They need to convey emotion, thoughts, or feelings in general through the way they're drawing the character and how they're making them gesture, whether it be their face or their body or whatever. And it is really strong, especially with Pagano. We can see the tension with Catwoman when she's trying to figure out whether or not to tell Batman, and when she finally does tell Batman, she breaks down into tears. You can see the fear the attendants' faces in the hospital at the beginning. It's just very solid. Very, very solid art. In conclusion, there's a lot of really great things in this arc. Tynion is doing a great job characterizing Batman. The motivation feels solid. He gets the characters, and I think that once this is over, he's gonna have a good story. But the biggest problem for me is we are 4 issues in, and the only sense of stakes we have are potential character drama. We don't really know why the designer is a threat, right? He's able to plan pretty well, but we haven't seen him personally execute anything yet. So I think that by now we should have gotten that sense of urgency. I should have known why I should be afraid for Batman and Catwoman's relationship, why I should be afraid for Gotham, and why this villain is a challenge for Batman. Art is fantastic. Again, I don't want to downplay Tynion's accomplishments because it is a solid arc. Now, thanks to my sponsor, AJ's Comics, I have a chance for you guys to be able to enter in to win a free copy of Batman number 86, which is the first issue to this arc. All you have to do is like this video, comment down below answering the question of the day, letting me know what your thoughts are on Tynion's approach to Batman, and subscribe to the channel for more content. And of course, make sure you are following both myself and AJ's Comics on Twitter. In order to get this rolling, this video will have to hit 20 likes within the first 3 days, but I definitely think you guys can do it, so make sure you guys follow through to enter in to win a free copy of Batman number 86. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys sticking around to the end of the video. Please make sure, if you have, to enter in to win a free copy of Batman number 86. And if you guys enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the channel and stick around for more stuff like this. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and this has been Dark Knight Nation.